The framers of the Constitution made the First Amendment freedom of speech for clear reasons. It was the most important. The ability of the individual to be able to speak up and say things that might be unpopular, not necessarily wrong, just unpopular, particularly to the power structure that's in place. That was sacrosanct, and it needed to be instantiated in law, and they were so important to them, they made it first. There's something wrong with a country where that is being undermined in order to protect another country, this other country being Israel. Israel is essentially, literally, stealing somebody else's land. Now, I often wondered what it would look like being in America during the time it was colonizing and stealing land and murdering and essentially wiping out the Native American population. I would imagine they would put laws in place, and using those laws in place will criminalize certain actions. I imagine that the settlers might have had a particularly racist idea of Native Americans, even though it was the Native Americans' land that was being stolen. And I would imagine they would even go so far as to say it was the Native Americans that were violent, they were animals, and that they were not wanting to share the land or trying to destroy America or something insane like that. Israel is a colonizing force of white Europeans that has colonized Palestine. In colonizing Palestine, they continuously steal land. Not to mention terrorizing the community, putting them in prison, torturing kids, disappearing people. They had an operation today where they went in and murdered 7 people, with one of the Israeli soldiers being killed in the action that they engaged in. Jewish state. It's an apartheid state. There may be structures that are different to South Africa, but it is an apartheid state nonetheless. One that persistently and continues to steal land with the backing of the United States, while simultaneously screaming, "There's a peace process, there's a peace process." They will never give up that differential advantage under this model. Because under this model, the United States backs them anytime they need backing. The United States protects them in the Security Council. They can do whatever they want in this regard. They murdered 2,000 people just a few years ago, and the rest of the world did squat. Just watched. Peering at the edge of the world, watching atrocities take place. No consequences. And under the model that we have now, any notion of a peace process is irrelevant. It doesn't exist. It's what they use in order to continue to steal land, and they use it as a fig leaf, as cover to steal that land. Enter one Cory Booker. Now, Cory Booker has... I gotta be honest, I don't particularly like Cory Booker. I think he's the Democratic version of Ted Cruz. Now, in saying he's the Democratic version of Ted Cruz, I make this point that this is not specific to Cory Booker. Our political system runs on cash, meaning the person with the most money wins 90% of the time. That means that you don't have a democracy in the typical sense of democracy without vigorous, continuous, unrelenting action, which means a certain degree of bravery, a certain degree of willingness to allow people like Booker to lose. 90% of the time, the person with the most money wins. Under that model, what is your job? What is priority number one? Priority number one, intuitively, is to maximize your cash. I need to get as much money as I could possibly get. Politicians spend 75% of their time begging for money. I need cash. I need money. Give me money. Give me money. I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to get that money. Oh, my knees are so dirty. Just give me some more cash. Give me cash. Why do you want a political system like that? Meaning, if that's true, which it is, and if that much money is the thing that flows through the political system, which it is, who are they paying attention to? You or the special interest that gives them all that cash? Do you really look at the political system and the world that you have now with in regards to the way your government works and believes that what's taking place is really in your best interests? Let's be honest. Now, they spend so much time trying to tell people that, no, seriously, the $1 billion that I got in no way influences my behavior. Or, for that matter, the hundreds of thousands or the millions, depending upon the state or Senate races that I got, in no way at all influences my behavior. Yes, I need this money in order to run in this race, and yes, I need this money to win this election, but it in no way impugns my behavior. And I am angry, sir, that you even bring it up. Yes, we bring it up because I think that's nonsense. Of course, if you're getting money and that's the main driver in regards to you winning that election, yes, of course, it's going to have influence. You would be insane not to. It is a rational response to the factors and environmental factors that are at play. Yes, a human being may have agency in this, but the agency in this is constrained by the environmental factors. And environmental factors say you need to get that money. You need to get that money. Oh, give me more money. Give me more money. Give me more money. Take a look at this. Traitor Cory Booker, is supporting a legislation that will go after or protect Israel at the expense of Americans. The initial bill was going to criminalize free speech of businesses that were supporting the or the BDS movement, essentially boycott, divest, sanctions. Israel is a colonizing force. Israel is stealing land. Israel is terrorizing that population. Israel is not involved in a peace process. They're calling themselves a Jewish state, for God's sake. Peaceful resistance. I will not buy X from any business that engages in stealing land and terrorizing the citizen population, and in helping the government terrorize the citizen population. Boycott, divest, sanction. The goal is to use a similar tactic that was used against South Africa: non-violence, resistance. Israel hates this. And because Israel hates this, and Israel has heavy, deep-pocketed donors, the people who are getting that cash also just so happen to hate this. One of such people being Cory Booker. This is pretty amazing, actually. It goes into this thing of criminalizing, I would argue, free speech. And the ACLU also makes the argument that it criminalizes free speech. Just to show you what it is. Right here. In fact, this is the second bill. The first bill tried to put people in prison. The first bill had prison time associated with it. They went to rewrite the bill because it was so stark. I mean, understand, they're making an argument that we need to gut what it is to be Americans in order to protect another state. I don't give a shit what the state is. Take any state: Mexico, Puerto Rico, Britain, Israel. Gutting the First Amendment. Gutting a person's individual right of determination to decide what business they want to engage in or what business they don't, meaning whether or not they want to engage in the BDS movement or not, at the behest of Israel, another foreign country. It is not the 51st state. It is another nation that is involved in colonizing, and we should not have our tether to this in this way. it creates a certain amount of resentment in the Arab world because they are again killing and stealing land from Palestinians. But I guess you can make a case they've gotten chummy with Saudi Arabia. So from the standpoint of Saudi Arabia, not so much. Either way, they're not the 51st state. And we should not have our senators and members of Congress setting themselves on fire, willing to shred the First Amendment in order to protect Israel. It is up to a business to make a determination on whether or not they want to, I guess, engage in business with Israel, or whether they don't want to engage with them because they are horrified at the crimes and atrocities that that country is committing. Take a look at this. So the ACLU opposes both the original form and the updated form that's supposed to be a softer version of a bill criminalizing free speech, and a business's determination on who it wants to engage in business with. The amended bill's title and statement of policy makes clear that it primarily targets a boycott of Israel. In particular, the bill expresses opposition to the United Nations Human Rights Council March 2016 resolution urging businesses to avoid supporting the establishment and maintenance of Israel settlements in occupied Palestinian territories, and calling for the establishment of a database of businesses engaged in certain activity in the occupied Palestinian territories. The bill would thus undoubtedly lead to new regulations imposing civil and criminal penalties for supporting the boycott of Israel. But it would also authorize the Trump administration and its successor to penalize any person who supports a boycott called for by an international governmental organization such as the UN Human Rights Council, unless the boycott is supported by the United States. Now, this gets into history of what's being used here, but I'm going to skip that part because that's going to go too far in detail. The court's reasoning applies with equal force to the Israel Anti-Boycott Act, regardless of whether or not the bill applies only to boycott of Israel, as many of the immediate effects, or whether it will apply to the next boycott called for by the UN Human Rights Council and opposed by the United States. In either case, Americans have the right to participate in political boycotts of foreign countries, regardless of whether the boycotted country are friendly to the United States or not. Indeed, whereas Kansas's law prohibited the state from contracting with individuals who participate in boycotts of Israel, the Israel Anti-Boycott Act will authorize the administration to criminalize participation in boycotts called for by international governmental organizations against countries friendly to the United States. So if a country, let's say the United Nations, says, hey, we're going to have a boycott of Israel because they're murdering, stealing land, the United States can say we're against that, in which case it is a crime to participate. The substitute bill makes some improvements over the initial draft. For example, the bill now states that a person, non-commercial speech, or other non-commercial expressive activity cannot be used as evidence to prove a violation or as support for initiating an investigation into whether or not a violation has occurred. Think about what they were trying to do before they even softened this bill. This was extremely noxious. Extremely noxious. And an amendment to the substitute bill attempts to narrow the bill's application to those solely engaged in commercial activities. These amendments do not resolve the bill's fundamental constitutional defect. The bill still prohibits any United States person from taking an action intending to comply with, further, or support a restricted trade practice or boycott fostered or imposed by an international governmental organization against a country which is friendly to the United States. You own a business. You hear that there's an international boycott of Israel. You may want to engage in that international boycott of Israel by not doing business with Israelis that are involved in the appropriation of land. They want to be able to charge you with a crime for making a personal choice with that business. That's amazing. That's amazing. Look who's supporting it. Cory Booker. One Cory Booker. Cory Booker to support Israel's anti-boycott act. Now, I just read you what the ACLU was saying about this. This is extreme. Shredding the First Amendment in order to set yourself on fire for a country that's not even a state. It's just another country we're associated with. Fuck the First Amendment. Fuck the Constitution. Hey, we need to protect Israel even at the expense of our own rights. Enter one Cory Booker. Now you have to ask your question, why would Cory Booker do this? Why would Cory Booker set himself on fire for another nation in this way? Well, let's see, right here. Let's meet Cory Booker's top right-wing Islamophobic pro-Israel outfit that backs Trump extremist agenda. Fact of the matter is, Cory Booker has a donor, has a sugar daddy. That sugar daddy is to the right of AIPAC. He's a lunatic and a racist. He's also fond of Cory Booker. Now, he can't make Cory Booker dance every time he wants Cory Booker to dance. But he can get Cory Booker to dance on the big ticket items. Do you remember when Obama was trying to pass the Iran nuclear deal? And many of the Democrats abdicated because Netanyahu was coming to Congress to bash their own president? Guess who was sitting in that house? Mr. One Cory Booker. As they bashed his own president, Cory Booker sat there and listened to Netanyahu do it. Him and a bunch of other Republicans. It's amazing. Let's take a look at this last part because this video is going long. Let's see. Yet away from the spotlight, Booker has cultivated a close relationship with a group that is closely aligned with Sessions and his bigoted politics, NORPAC, a Republican-run pro-Israel group that has pushed a nakedly Islamophobic agenda in the United States while supporting Trump's extremist nominee for the United States ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. Now, NORPAC's agenda is well to the right of AIPAC, the main arm of Israel's lobby. In fact, the group gives Booker more than twice the amount of money he receives from Goldman Sachs, $158,871 in a single campaign cycle. NORPAC is run by Ben Chauk, a New Jersey doctor who endorsed Ted Cruz for the president Republican primary and insinuated that Congressman Keith Ellison is unfit to be chair of the Democratic National Committee based on the fact that he received donation from the Council of American Islamic Relations, the largest Islamic Muslim rights organization of America. Because if he just so happened to be Muslim, he's racist, as opposed to having a Jewish state. It's fucking amazing. Despite knowing he cannot get Cory Booker to take right-wing stances on every issue, Church has discovered that he can get Booker to take right-wing stances on Israel by ensuring he gives more money to Booker than anyone else. The scratch. Give him cash. This was the Netanyahu thing where Netanyahu bashed Obama, the Democratic president. Cory Booker, Democrat, sat there and watched and listened, weighed down by the cash that was in his pocket. So he had a run-in with Cory Booker, and I'll paraphrase. In this run-in, he's asking Cory Booker about the BDS movement, or at the very least, he's asking the person who's, let's see. So, George Helmy. Now, George Helmy is Booker's state director. He has an unsettling run-in with Cory Booker, where Cory Booker is just being a robot. And he gets to the point of being able to ask this guy about the BDS movement. His response to this was, the BDS movement is racist. He says, how and why do you believe the boycott, divestment, sanction movement is racist? It's a non-valid movement. It's not racist. Israel is a state And just like South Africa was a state, and if you're doing things that are killing and murdering and maiming and expropriating land from people and terrorizing the population, it is right to try to inflict your will on that state to get them to not do those things, or at the very least to not support them in doing those things. In this case, he says they're racist because they're trying to divest from Israel, and Israel is a Jewish state. Meaning, because they're calling it a Jewish state, it by definition makes it racist. This is nonsense logic. But this is the logic that's being used in order to try to castigate the BDS movement. Fact of the matter is, you have a racist state that's stealing land, essentially a colonizing force. And you have a group of people who've come together to try to stop supporting a country that's doing that. I don't care what country it is. I care about what they're doing. You can call yourself whatever you want. You're a state, just like any other state. And as a state, just like any other state, you can be criticized. It has nothing to do with the goddamn either religion or race, depending on how you want to look at the situation. It has everything to do with what you're doing. That said, he comes with an interesting conclusion. And I'm going to end it on this. And unsettling as the town hall was, the experience gave me a newfound sense of clarity. I had finally witnessed in up-close personal fashion the destructive influence of campaign finance on a politician who had his eyes on the presidency. The massive contributions from NORPAC and other pro-Israel donors do not encourage Booker to turn his back on his constituents. Not only encourage Booker to turn his back on his constituents, along with Trump and his far-right administration, it forces him and his staff to commit themselves to logical fallacies that place them in an alternative reality. To know why Booker has opposed one of the major civil rights causes of our times, just follow the money. Just follow the money. This is not one of those things where you need to, this is not bewildering. If the person is taking cash, and the person needs that cash in order to win their election, then they're tethered to what it takes to get that cash. And the person who's given that cash is not giving it just to give it. They're giving it with a tether attached, knowing full well that when they call, they'll pick up that phone. Now, Cory Booker would never own up to that ever. But at 3 a.m. between him and his God, he already knows. And I would make the point that you don't need to, wait for that 3 a.m. between him and his God type thing where he finally comes out and he commits, he admits the stuff. Be cynical. Use your own thought processes. This person is getting a ton of money. This person is getting a ton of money from a particular person or particular organization. He needs this money to get elected. What are you going to do for that money? And are you going to continuously turn down the person who's giving you the money? And if you do, will they continue to give you the money? The answer, of course, is no, they won't continue to give you that money. We need to fix our campaign donation system, because otherwise we're going to end up with situations where the First Amendment and our laws and the political leaders who are there supposedly representing us are representing special interests. In this case, one Cory Booker is willing to shred the Constitution itself for the sake of Israel. That's a fail. He should fail in this. The Ted Cruz of the Democratic Party should fail in his endeavors here. Bet Sam Cedar vote for it. Bet Sam Cedar vote for it. Only because he's blue, no matter who. It has nothing to do with him being Jewish. Everything to do with him being a Democrat. Just want to make a distinction in those things. Alright guys, I'll end it here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support the Patreon. Thanks all.